and we that agreed to discuss the issues this afternoon. We are very fortunate to discuss. I think Ibu Mari Pangestu would also be joining online later on to discuss about the issue. It's quite interesting actually. This morning, in this very same room, we have discussions not on Trump issues, not on tariff issues, but on global terrorism. Yeah. And interestingly, global terrorism is actually in decline. It's quite fortunate for us, but unfortunately, we are now facing different kind of terrorism, different kind of terror, in terms of tariff terror, perhaps. Because it like terrorism, it also spread fears and concerns as well as worried among different globally, not only in one country but also globally, and that kind of fears and concerns have really attract different kind of response. Nowadays, we heard the news that already 70 countries, 70 nations are in line in the trying to negotiate with the U.S. administration. Selamat datang Ibu Wakil Menteri Widya Roro. Please, Ibu Dyah Roro, you can join us, join me here, if you like. Maybe because Pak Havas is already here also. Ya, di sini mungkin Bu. Thank you banyak. Makasih. Ya, oh ya, this is without further ado, perhaps we could also start. We will start our discussions on the regional response to Trump 2.0 by having Bapak Vice Minister Havas Oegroseno to give some remarks. I believe Pak Havas is also involved a lot in the current situations, Pak. We all see you during Pak Pak Erlangga, Pak Menko Perekonomian statements at that times. You were also there, so perhaps you can share with us how do you see or how Indonesian government sees the current situations, at especially the Trump tariff policy, and how Indonesia should respond. Do you think that Indonesia might also need to go for the negotiations and also to offer concessions to the U.S. And what kind of strategy that Indonesia might deliver in order to deal with the current situation? Please, Pak Havas.
Terima kasih, Mas Rizal. I hope my voice is loud and clear here in Jakarta.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Can you bisa lebih keras, Pak? Or perhaps our sound system?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but not really that good. Yeah.
Because the volume is very max here.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Now it's good, Pak.
Okay, good. All right.
It's better.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't have much time because I have a meeting with Malaysian Minister of Economy in 45 minutes. So I will just mention a couple of points. And also I want to relate on my visit, actually not only KL, but I just came from Sabah, a state of Malaysia that has a very close trade relations with us, with Indonesia. So, of course, we heard a lot of comments, a lot of statements about the unilateral tariff of President Trump. But when the dust starts to settle, probably it's a good thing. A good thing in terms of momentum for a country in different region to look into the regional potential by themselves. Let me give you some numbers. So the U.S. Contributions to trade is around 13.5%, maybe 14%. And in terms of services is 14%. So we are looking at the fact that 80% of global trade is somewhere else, not in the US. Okay? And if we look at the US global trade value is somewhere around $400 billion US. And interestingly, intra-ASEAN trade by 2024 is, or was, sorry, $759 billion US. So it means that the intra-ASEAN trade is actually doing very, very well, as opposed to the number that US has contribution at the global level. Now, what I said that the policy might be a good thing is basically momentum. Momentum for, at least in ASEAN, to work more on the intra-ASEAN trade. We probably need to revise or at least review the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. CSIS would be in the right place to organize this exercise. We need to finish the DEFA. We need to look at trade barriers within ASEAN. We can learn from European Union on how they're trying to remove barriers between countries, although we all know that EU internal market is much more advanced than us in ASEAN. But probably it's a good thing for us to look at what can we do within ASEAN to have a mechanism similar to the European Union. How we can ease the movement of people, how we can ease the movement of goods, how we can ease the movement of services within the ASEAN itself. So I went to Sabah actually to try to look at ways and means to deepen the intra-ASEAN trade through intra-province trade. Sabah trade with Indonesia was 2.8 billion ringgit in 2019, and last year it went down to just 1.4 billion ringgit. It means there's something wrong with the trade between Sabah and Kalimantan Utara and Kalimantan Timur. And it also means that if we can reach 2.8 billion ringgit in 2019, we could do the same or even do it more within the context of intra-province trade. So I'm talking about border trade agreement, expanded versions. And during my visit in Sabah, I proposed that the economic relations between Sabah can also be expanded to different provinces between Sulawesi Utara, Sulawesi Barat, Sulawesi Selatan, Kalimantan, the whole province with Sabah and Sarawak. Because we are doing the same thing with Northern Territory of Australia on raw minerals. And I think we should do the same thing with states of Malaysia in the Straits of Malacca vis-a-vis our provinces in the Straits of Malacca as well. So intra-ASEAN trade, intra-province trade within the ASEAN need to be developed even further. I mean, our GDP within ASEAN is around 3.8 trillion US dollar. And if our trade today is 759 billion US dollar, we can probably increase, make a target, $1.5 trillion, for instance, half of our GDP. I think it's reachable. So the silver lining, I believe, is that looking at the numbers, 87% of the global trade is somewhere else, and within the ASEAN itself, then we need to look at the possibilities, ways and means to deepen it, because I don't see any other alternative. If we want to reach what we call a strategic regional independence in terms of how we should not be dependent on external elements. I'm not talking about the US, I'm talking also about any other global players. I think ASEAN needs to work very hard to find out what are the barriers within the trade of the ASEAN and try to take them down as soon as possible. And I think this is also in line with the recent statement of the ASEAN Minister of Economy that was issued, the joint statement just today. And in one of the paragraph, Article 8, I think you can check it out. It also specifically mentioned the importance of working at the intra-ASEAN level. As in terms of your question, Mas Rizal, how should we deal with this issue with the US government? I think we all believe in rule-based, international-based rules. I think we should work on that basis. We should work on the WTO rules. We should discuss and engage the United States and try to find ways and means to balance the discussions between the two countries. And I think it's also important that in this discussion we should also bring in the element of services. So it's not just trade in goods, but also trade in services. Because I think if you look at the number of services between, say, ASEAN and US, the value is almost the same, somewhere around 560 billion US dollar. My number could be wrong, but I think in terms of services, they are doing okay. And if you look at the expanded services, for instance, how many Indonesians, Malaysians, Singaporeans studies in the US, and they paid with their own money or with a scholarship from ASEAN countries, I think the number could be even higher. So then I think, Pak Rizal, it's the two ideas I'm putting forward. Number one, of course, that we need to discuss with the US. We need to remain in the context of rule-based order, WTO. And the second, I think, is also a wake-up call for us. This is a momentum. It's a very good momentum for ASEAN to create strategic regional independence on economic matters, so that we will not be intimidated by what you talk about economic terrorism. Your word, Pak, not mine. Thank you, Pak.
Yeah, quite clear, Pak. Quite loud and clear, actually, the message that we sent. Perhaps I would like to invite Bu Dyah, Roro, Vice Minister of Trade, to also give us some kind of response from ASEAN. I believe just this morning, Ministers of Trade and Minister of Economics from ASEAN countries also have a special meeting in order to arrange the regional response for that. So perhaps you can share with us what kind of regional response. Pak Havas mentions about this is also momentum for us to accelerate our regional trade and regional relations. So maybe we can also have that. Do you think it's quite possible to do that? Yeah. Is it kind of like a good and feasible for good things for us to do in the meantime? Please, Bu.
Firstly, thank you very much for having me here today. I guess before I address the floor, I'd like to firstly answer the question that you mentioned earlier. So the ASEAN region is a very important region for all of us. This is the case because this is known to be the 5th largest economy in the world when we look at the ASEAN region in itself. And we heard earlier from Honorable Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pak Havas, that this amounts to around 3.5 trillion US dollars. And so engaging the ASEAN market and ASEAN region is vital and very important. Just in the 28th of February, I attended the ASEAN Economic Ministers retreat, and this was in itself very momentous, as we were able to engage with trade ministers across the ASEAN region. And one of the momentum being that there were discussions about incorporating Timor-Leste to be a part of ASEAN. So that was also one of the key takeaways. But all in all, we were able to kind of, from Indonesia's side, push forward a non-paper. So this non-paper was pushed forth by Indonesia and was coordinated very well with Malaysia and other countries within the ASEAN region, with the hopes of creating the very essence of ASEAN centrality and unity. And this, at the time, was meant to kind of encourage ASEAN countries to come together in the face of the global trade situation, global trade uncertainty, as we call it. The trade war between the US and China, but of course Indonesia having to position itself quite strategically, given that we are a non-bloc state, which means that we are friends of both America, US, as well as China. But all in all, this very essence of unity within the ASEAN region is quite important for us to diversify our trade portfolio, for us to commence conversations amongst the regional states in order for us to expand our exports and our markets generally. And so that was kind of one of the key takeaways that we had within the forum. And today, just this morning, and I think CSIS is quite lucky because probably this is the first time we announced this, but the Minister of Trade, Pak Budi Santoso, has attended a meeting with, virtually, with ASEAN ministers across the ASEAN region. And one of the very essence of the conversation was about pushing forward again that very essence of ASEAN centrality and unity in the midst of this again global uncertainty. I think when we speak of global uncertainty, this can be understood in many different lenses. But all in all, one of the things that was pushed forward is how to be open in terms of communication and collaboration amongst the ASEAN states, and to ensure that there is a balanced and sustainable relationship going forward, and reaffirming the readiness to work together with the U.S., particularly under the ASEAN-U.S. Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, or TIFA. This is very important and needs to be upgraded perhaps. We know that when we speak of TIFA, we have one individually with the United States, Indonesia-US TIFA, and this was enacted in 1996, and is something that we need to see the potential ways in which we can upgrade this going forward. And amongst the conversation, there were talks around how ASEAN can remain steadfast in, again, deepening the regional economic integration, and how we can capture opportunities within the region, how we can diversify our trade relations and our markets going forward. And really the very essence, and this was, a part of the conversation during the AEM retreat, is how we can view each other, each nation within the ASEAN region, as a potential partner, as opposed to a competition or a competitive state. And I think this is very important. Again, putting forward the very essence of unity, centrality. So this was one of the talks, and ASEAN as a region also is open to communication. This is something that I'd like to address later on as well, where most of the ASEAN countries are not retaliating towards what was, confirmed and conveyed by the United States in terms of the tariff imposed to the different countries. And due to that response, I think across the ASEAN region, we see, especially this morning, we just got the update in which, the tariffs have been pulled back down to 10%, and this was quite universal. And there is a delay of 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. And so most of the ASEAN states, if not all, are experiencing the same because we reacted in the same way. And I think that in itself is important to maintain the close relationship that whether it be the ASEAN region, in which the ASEAN region has with the United States, but also Indonesia as a country who have built its bilateral relations and also trade relations with the United States quite well so far. And being that the US is one of the largest trading partners for Indonesia, and we value this quite immensely, and we want to make sure that we're taking the right steps forward and finding the right solutions going forward.
Thank you very much, Widya, Roro. I think really good information that you share with us. Can you elaborate more about this regional response and the way that we're trying to do at the ASEAN level, perhaps on the current situations? Maybe, like for example, is there any specific way we're trying to do something to face the U.S. or to deal with the U.S.? Is there any kind of things?
Yeah, I think going back into the point where unity is the very kind of basic basis that we'd like to start everything with, and to ensure that we see this more of an opportunity rather than a constraint. Changing that narrative and perspective, we believe, is crucial. And under the leadership of Bapak Prabowo Subianto, who is again encouraging his cabinet to keep moving forward and encouraging us to, have these conversations with our trading partner, with the U.S., is quite essential. And if I may, I'd like to give a little bit of the kind of background, so as everybody gets a hindsight about what the Ministry of Trade has been doing. I think there are a lot of questions with regards to, how come there's been no statement made by the Ministry of Trade. One of the main reasons of this being the case is because we've been working very hard behind the scenes, under the leadership of the coordinating Minister of Economic Affairs, Bapak Erlangga Hartarto, and we know that there are several leading ministries, including that of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bapak Sugiono, and also the Minister of Finance, Ibu Sri Mulyani, and with all due respect, even during the holidays, we've been on Zoom calls non-stop, and I guess this is something that not a lot of the public knew about, but is something that we're trying to act on a regular basis. And I'd like to also highlight how under the presidency of Bapak Prabowo Subianto, and going back into 5 months ago, the retreat that happened right after we were inaugurated into office, and this was a basis in itself for us to push forward this, the importance of collaboration and communication across the ministries, and it was quite monumental that that happened in the very first kind of stages of our time in office, and this this encouragement and this strive to want to keep coordinating and collaborating is still the case even in present today, and so this in itself is, I feel, quite important. But otherwise, if I may, I can. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace and blessings be upon you all. Firstly, thank you very much, CSIS, for having me here today. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about the progress that is currently undertaken by the Indonesian government in response to the tariffs, reciprocal tariffs that has been levied on the ASEAN region, but also most importantly to Indonesia. And we do gather here at a time of tremendous uncertainty in global trade, and the return of President Trump to the White House has brought with it a new wave of tariffs, and what is now known as, I mentioned earlier, the reciprocal tariff policy. And this in itself is a unilateral move that imposes tariffs on countries that the US views as maintaining higher trade barriers. For ASEAN countries, these tariffs range from around 10% to 49%. In Indonesia, in particular, is subject to 32% tariffs. However, as this morning, as we know, the recent announcement that this has been pushed down back to 10%, and again with the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, with the exception of China in this case. So we'll make sure that we are keeping tabs on the latest developments with regards to this. And moreover, this policy, this remains a real challenge, not just for Indonesia, but also for the entire Southeast Asian region, and in which we have upheld free and open trade as a pillar of growth and development as well as stability. In 2024, ASEAN ranked, as I mentioned earlier, the 5th largest export market for US agricultural goods, with total trade of goods reaching $306 billion US dollars, and within that, Indonesia contributed as much as $14.34 billion US dollars to the US trade deficit. So yes, currently Indonesia is experiencing a surplus with the US, and we are the top 15 countries, which is why from the very beginning we've always been kind of in the radar. And these figures, as we know, underscore the depth and complexity of our trade relationship. We are concerned about the impact on labor-intensive sectors, including that of textiles and garments, footwear, palm oil, and downstream derivatives. This includes rubber tires and electronic and automotive components. These industries are not only export-driven, they are critical to Indonesia's employment landscape as well as rural development. And so in response to this shifting landscape, President Prabowo has instructed its cabinet to move forward with a strategy grounded in diplomacy, regional solidarity, and long-term diversification. Firstly, Indonesia is led by the Coordinating Minister of Economic Affairs, Bapak Erlangga Hartarto, Minister of Finance, Ibu Sri Mulyani, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bapak Sugiono, will pursue structured and constructive negotiations with the United States next week in Washington, D.C., and we value our bilateral and trade relationship with the United States and believe that open dialogue is the best path to avoid further trade tension escalation. Through diplomatic channels, we aim to clarify the scope of the reciprocal tariff policy and advocate for fair treatment and highlight the mutual costs of such tariffs, not only for Indonesian exporters, but also for U.S. importers and consumers. Our approach will involve formal diplomatic engagement at both the federal as well as state levels. This in itself is a collaboration with the U.S. businesses that rely on Indonesian inputs and targeted sectoral discussions on priority goods as well. President Prabowo is keen to increase imports from the United States. We've seen this discussion playing out, and I think a lot of you have probably seen in the media. This was announced by Minister Erlangga as well. And these commodities include, particularly within the agricultural sectors, soya bean as well as wheat, as a means of, again, decreasing the United States trade deficit with Indonesia. This type of negotiation, we believe, is very crucial and provides a win-win solution for both sides, and that being the United States as well as Indonesia. And secondly, Indonesia is actively engaging with the fellow ASEAN countries to align our positions and build a united front in response to the current trade uncertainties. We must act as one, and I think this very essence of ASEAN unity and centrality is something that we're trying to achieve together, and we've seen these discussions taking place up until this morning across the trade ministers across the ASEAN region. And again, I spoke a little bit about the non-paper that we pushed forward back in February. And we hope this encourages the ASEAN region to collaboratively work together in the midst of all these uncertainties to help each other and to make sure that we diversify our markets and build good communication with the United States, who we believe are a great partner in terms of trade. And lastly, third, and this I find to be quite crucial, and I want to highlight a bit about the progress being made, particularly within the Ministry of Trade, is that Indonesia is accelerating its export market diversification agenda through the negotiation and finalization of free trade agreements. This is not simply in response of the U.S. tariffs. So this happened way before these conversations took place, way before the reciprocal tariffs took place. But this is a continuation of Indonesia's long-standing strategy to expand market access, to enhance trade resilience, and stimulate job creation as well. Indonesia is currently finalizing several free trade agreements, FTAs. To name a few, there's the Indonesia-Canada CIPA. There's CIPA being the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. There's also the Indonesia-Peru CIPA, Indonesia-EU CIPA, Iran PTA, the Preferential Trade Agreement, as well as the Amendment Protocol to the Indonesia-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, IJPA. These 5 countries play a vital role in expanding new market access opportunities for Indonesia's trade. And allow me to share a little bit about the key developments in Indonesia's trade diplomacy, particularly our efforts to finalize as well as strengthen the series of free trade agreements that will shape our economic future. This is quite important for us to also socialize, to make sure that the public is aware that there are several priorities in which the Ministry of Trade has. The first one being how we can safeguard our national economy and our national trade. Second one being how we can boost our international market by finalizing some of our trade agreements across different regions and countries. And lastly, how our small medium enterprises can be well known in the international market. We understand that this contributes around 60% of our GDP, of Indonesia's GDP. And we see that one of the reasons why Indonesia's economy thrived was because this sector, the SMEs, were able to survive. And this is a very important point. Again, 60% is a big number. And we want to make sure that we can strengthen and uplift the small, medium enterprises for them to be even more well recognized. And so the Indonesia-Canada SIPA, this provides a valuable opportunity to engage a high-income market with a projected GDP of $2.2 trillion in 2024. Canada's growing demand for halal certified products, seafood, agriculture goods, and ethical source commodities aligns closely with Indonesia's export strengths, especially in palm oil, coffee, and cocoa. And there is also a rising interest in sustainable textiles, and garments opens a promising avenue for Indonesia's fashion and home textile industries. And in Latin America, the Indonesia-Peru SIPA, this serves a strategic entry point to a dynamic region. Peru, with a GDP of $289 billion is one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America. And we hope that we can expand our exports in key sectors, including that of palm oil, rubber, pharmaceuticals, processed foods, textiles, fashion, rubber, and others. And so these are just some of the products that we're looking into exporting in that region. And equally important, we have the Indonesia-EU SIPA. This stands as one of the most ambitious trade undertakings. The European Union is with a projected GDP of 18.6 trillion presents one of the world's most advanced consumer markets. And once finalized, we want to make sure that this can broaden, again, our export potential, particularly in furniture, textiles, renewable energy technologies, and green economy products. This is quite big, especially being a country that's already ratified the Paris Agreement. And we see a lot of the European Union countries already ratifying the same agreements and having that commitment in creating a sustainable future. The moving forward in enhancing certain markets with green technologies is something that we'd like to partner with other countries. And on the ASEAN Pacific front, the amendment protocol to the Indonesia-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, this brings a long-standing partnership with Japan into a new era. Japan's economy, valuing around $4 trillion remains heavily reliant on imported raw materials and semi-finished goods. And so this is also something we'd like to explore going forward in the region. There's also the Indonesia-Iran Preferential Trade Agreement, PTA, offering a gateway to a complex yet promising market. Despite the ongoing sanctions, Iran, with a GDP of $318 billion continues to show a strong demand for Indonesian halal food. So the halal industry is quite big for the international market, processed foods as well as affordable manufactured goods as well. And we want to make sure that we relieve some tariff barriers. We want to make sure that there is an ease of doing business across these different regions. And we want to make sure that, again, we are expanding our market and seeing the potentials in which we may have in partnership with other countries across the world. Last but not least, also mentioned several times by Bapak Erlangga Hartarto, we're aiming to revive the Indonesia-US Trade and Investment Framework Agreement. So TIFA is a big one, and we want to upgrade it because this was enacted in 1996. And so this is keen to include new policies that are more aligned with today's kind of trade dynamics going forward. And there are several working groups, particularly within the services, intellectual property rights, investments, and agriculture, and industrial goods as well. So hopefully this will serve itself as a platform for both countries to re-explore the potential in which we may have to collaborate going forward and to see how we can expand our trade as well. So these are kind of some of the highlights that I'd like to convey in today's discussion. I hope it kind of serves as a gateway to the next panel discussion that we will have, which I'm sure will be just as informative. And again, we want to make sure that we are open for communication, we are open for negotiation, and this is what has been instructed by the President, Pa Prabowo Subianto, and we are ready to work hard in our ministry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Widya, Roro. I think it's very assuring that we you give us information not only on Indonesia's response but also regional response as well, and how Indonesia try to promote the regional response, because I think as Pa Havas also mentioned that there are a lot we can see the current situations as an opportunity as well, especially to look at to diversify our market and also to strengthen the regional economic integrations. Thank you very much, Bu Roro, Bu Dyah, Bu Vice Minister. I think I hope we will hear from you again, and hopefully you will come back to CSIS every time so we will have discussions. Yeah.
I look forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next, we will take a picture together. Please join us on the floor, Pa Yose and Your Excellency Bu Dyah Roro. We would also like to invite all panelists, Mr. Danny Quah, Mr. Shiro Armstrong, Mrs. Donna Priadi, and also Bapak Yusuf Wanandi. Please join us for the picture. Please come more to the middle. Thank you very much for joining us on the photo. And for the next session, I would like to give the floor back to Pa Yose.
Okay, after a very good and inspiring speech as well as the explanation from our Vice Minister Havas Oegroseno and also Ibu Dyah Roro Esti, the Vice Minister of Trade, yeah, we will have panel discussions looking at the more detail, more deeply about the current situations and the regional response to this Trump policy. And with us today already, we have already Pak Dani Quah, please. Professor Dani Quah is the Professor of Economics as well as the Deans of Lee Kuan Yew School of the National University of Singapore. It's good to have you here. We also have Professor Shiro Armstrong from the Australian National University, Crawford School of Public Policy. Please, Shiro, you can take a seat over there. And also Ibu Donna Priadi from the Managing Directors of AmCham Indonesia, the American Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. And with us also, joining us online, is Ibu Mari Pangestu. Bu Mari, you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Sorry, you can see I am in the car.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, but perhaps you can speak a little bit louder, Bu. Later on.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you increase a little bit the volume? Yes.
Is that better?
I think so. Yes, yes, a bit better. But if you can talk a little bit louder, then it would be much better. Okay.
Trying to find the mic. Where's the mic on the phone?
All right.
I don't know where it is. Okay, I'll just try to speak very loud.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. We have a very strong lines of panel discussions here to discuss about the regional response. So maybe I'd like to start with Ibu Mari, but because are you still there?
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
still here.
All right. Because it seems that Ibu Mari is on the way to I don't know, to the airport perhaps.
I won't tell you where I'm
will start
going
with you,
to.
Bu Mari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think yesterday you wrote a piece in on articles in Jakarta Post about the regional response. So perhaps you can enlighten us on what do you think about this kind of regional response and how to synchronize between the current individual response of the of countries in ASEAN with the regional response. I don't know whether you hear from Ibu Dyah Roro this morning, just recently, about the meeting of the ASEAN economic ministers and how they also come up with some commitment in order to have a regional response. But can you also give us your perspective on that?
Can you hear me? Please. Rania told me to take my iPods off, so now I actually can't hear you, but I hope you can hear me. Can you just give a thumbs up if you can hear me better without the iPods?
Yes, you can speak louder.
All right, let me. The image looks terrible, but anyway, I will speak very loudly. Just in very briefly, if I may respond. I did listen to both Havas and Roro, and I think it's very encouraging the messages that came out from what they were saying. It's very encouraging, and as Widya Roro mentioned, actually a retreat, calling for ASEAN collective response, and this has been, I think, positively responded over the last few weeks, and especially after April 2nd, culminating in the AEM statement as well as our president going to Malaysia and so on. And the message is very clear. I think both Havas and Widya mentioned this, that ASEAN countries will not retaliate. We will continue to engage, and we will continue to adhere to WTO and open and rules-based trading system. And that we will continue to diversify and continue to engage within ourselves as well as in the wider region. So I think that's a very clear message. So I'd like to make just three points. The first point is on ASEAN. And I think if you see the piece that I wrote recently, as well as one I wrote with Shiro previously. So there are two things here that we need to manage as ASEAN, not just how to respond to the Trump tariffs, but how to manage the trade diversion that's going to happen with all the differential tariffs, and especially the kind of increase of exports that are going to come out of China. But now it's not just China. I think a lot of other countries will also have similar responses of sending their exports that were supposed to go to the US elsewhere. So I think managing the trade diversion is going to also be require also a response from ASEAN and a dialogue. Just like we're going to have an engagement and effective dialogue, hopefully with the US, we also need to have one with China, as well as in general, how do we manage this trade diversion together? Again, not to retaliate, not to increase protectionism, but to use the trade remedy instruments that are there, whether it's the safeguards or the anti-dumping and a dialogue, to increase investments rather than increase trade along those lines. That's kind of the ASEAN comment that I would make. And also, I think when we talk about having a collective ASEAN response, we're all being affected. It's amazing. All 10 ASEAN countries have been hit by tariffs, but we are going to have, each country has a differential impact depending on your dependence of trade to GDP and your dependence on the US market. So there are differential impact, but Vietnam and Thailand, according to all the modeling that I've seen, the quick modeling results that I've seen, are going to be the hardest hit with anything between 1.5 to -2% contraction. Indonesia is predicted to have about a 0.5% contraction. And it's not just the first round effect, but also the second round effect if there's a trade war and if there is impact on China and slowing down of China growth and so on. So I think there is this differential impact, and therefore I think the question that I don't know the answer to is when we have bilateral dialogue and so-called negotiations with the US, some of us are already promising giving the US zero tariffs. It's not clear what that means, and it is being something that's being discussed. It's not for all goods, obviously. It's for the goods that the U.S. thinks of faces high tariffs. Is the reduction of tariff only to the U.S., which means you're giving an import subsidy to the U.S., or is it done on an MFN basis? I think there's going to be a lot of discussion that we need to have individually in the countries as well as in the ASEAN level. How do we avoid being, split up as bilateral trade negotiations instead of trying to have a more collective position? I'll just put that on the table. I don't really have good answers for that. And obviously the other component, which is what has been proposed by Indonesia and within the ASEAN context, is to pursue sectoral strategic initiatives that would be forward-looking involving the U.S., whether it's semiconductors, critical minerals, and other areas. So I think this is also going to be a key area for us to cooperate. The second point I would make is in relationship to diversifying trade and Havas emphasized intra-ASEAN trade. But I would sort of, and Dyah mentioned that we're going to have to continue to engage with other trading partners. I think there's one thing that neither one of them mentioned, which is RCEP. The most natural way that we should be increasing the engagement between ourselves is the mechanism that's already there and certainly strongly going to help us develop regional supply chains. And you would have noticed that Korea and Japan actually already called for cooperation within RCEP early on when the April 2nd tariff was announced. So I think we need to really, as ASEAN, given that RCEP was initiated by ASEAN and there's centrality of ASEAN there, to really invigorate and revitalize and even call for a meeting at ministerial level for RCEP. My last point is related to domestic responses. I think actually the president made a very clear, the president and the coordinating minister and so on, 2 days ago, I think Jose, you were there, called a meeting of all the economists as well as the private sector and made it very clear that yes, we will have this team that's going to negotiate and discuss and engage with the US, but most importantly, what do we do domestically to respond? And it is about, first of all, anticipating slower growth. Therefore, your fiscal policy needs to be counter-cyclical, and you need to focus on programs as well as spending that will have direct impact, most in a multiplier effect, and so on. So there is that component. And then there's a component about deregulation and reforms, which is about improving your efficiency, increasing your export competitiveness, and taking the opportunity that everybody already mentioned about the diversification and the relocation of investments. So this is very important, and this is a program of deregulation which is going to address the trade issues, the investment issues, and a lot of the other issues that the private sector and Donna we had a meeting with AmCham. We've been having meetings with all the different business associations. And within that, there are sectors that will be more impacted because of the tariffs, which is the textiles, garments, footwear, furniture, electronics, and the aquaculture, prawns sector. So they will face certain issues, and certain facilitation will be needed to make sure that we don't incur disruption, shocks in the transition that we hope will happen with the bigger deregulation packages and investments coming in. So there's also that component which the government is working on to address specific sectors. And interestingly, just my final point, anecdotally, the furniture exporters we talked to yesterday, they actually said, oh, this may be the silver lining in the black clouds, because this is actually an opportunity for us to really think through how do we become more competitive. And they, as always, they showed figures how uncompetitive we were compared to Vietnam and China. So let's look at it as an opportunity also domestically as to how do we address our own issues domestically. So let me end there. I'm not sure I've taken more than 5 minutes or not, but the intention is to provide those three big messages. Thank you. And I'll turn off my video, but I'll try to continue to listen.
So
Thank you.
you're still going to be with us during the discussion. And we will go back to you later on, yeah? If it is okay. Bu Mari? Okay. I don't know. Do you still hear me? No? Okay, let's move to other panelists here. Well, first to Professor Quah. What is your perspective on this current issue? Do you have anything to share with us? And we've been hearing about about how both at national level and also at the regional levels, Bu Mari even mentions about RCEP, which means even greater regions beyond just ASEAN to have some kind of synchronized or concerted response. What do you think about it?
Thank you, Pa, and thank you, fellow panelists and the audience, for sharing your afternoon with me. I want to, in my answer to yourself, Chair, I want to give you my reaction, first to what the two vice ministers have said, what my good friend Bumari has given us, and my response is comprised of two parts. A first part where I agree wholeheartedly, and the second part where my emphasis is a little bit different from what vice ministers and what I've heard. So the first part, where I agree wholeheartedly, is how, in response not just to Trump 2.0, but to the very many changes happening in the international system, it is imperative that ASEAN stand together. Okay. It might be that we want to make it a bigger grouping, but certainly at a minimum, ASEAN needs to stand together. Associated with that is that we must all see how important it is for regional solidarity. And we must all see how important it is that we continue to build long-run security for ourselves. I think the vice ministers and Bumari all say that. I want to say how much I completely agree with that. My second point, I do agree with what's been said about how, in reaction to Trump 2.0 or other actions that we see continuing to happen, we should not retaliate. We should not show that we lose our temper, get impatient, walk away angrily. We must not retaliate. But let me quickly follow up by saying, not retaliating does not mean appeasing. Not retaliating does not mean agreeing to everything that is asked for us, whether reasonable or unreasonable. Whatever actions we take as a regional grouping or as individual ASEAN member states have to be in our interest. We must not show that we are appeasing. After all, our goals include trade, but also include environment, and also include global, regional, non-traditional security. And on many of these issues, Trump and the United States have shown that they are moving in a direction away from the rest of us. Trump took America out of the Paris Agreement, which would have helped us provide a better response to the global environmental crisis. On the first day of his administration, Trump took America out of the World Health Organization. Trump and America's actions at the World Trade Organization have been very unhelpful to the running of the international economic system. So while we welcome Trump and the United States in whatever regional or global arrangements that work for us, we also don't appease. We don't retaliate, but we don't lash out. Okay. And we don't appease. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by appeasement. Although it is no longer relevant now, when Trump first announced his so-called Liberation Day tariffs, a number of countries immediately lined up and tried to call him and say, we will do what you ask of us by lowering our tariffs against you to zero. They did this unilaterally. They did this without consultation of the rest of the economic grouping. And by doing this, they showed appeasement. They defected from our grouping, which would have made us stronger together. And by doing this, they show that if a bully comes into the neighborhood, they will agree to what the bully asks of them. And when you do that, tomorrow the bully is going to ask for more. So while I completely agree we should not retaliate, we should also not appease. Because at this point in the international economic system, not all of our interests are aligned the same way. And when they don't align, we have to draw a line in the sand and say we disagree. We're not lashing out, we're not retaliating, we just humbly disagree. And that is very appropriate. So that is my position on the current situation. If I may, Bob, let me say 3 quick things that justify what I've just described. The first is that while we are all focused on Trump 2.0 and on the so-called Liberation Day tariffs, as I've tried to indicate, these are just surface manifestations of something more fundamental going on in the international system. That more fundamental thing is actually very worrying, and in a way, much more worrying than a tariff rate of 34% or 32% or 64%. Because something else that's going on is longer term. That something else is the destruction of the multilateral rules-based order. The multilateral rules-based order is something that all of us, especially the emerging developing countries, have benefited from greatly. The multilateral rules-based order is what allows us, as small countries, small states, poorer countries, developing economies, to stand toe-to-toe, co-equal with the advanced rich countries. And when that system is pulled away, we are at a permanent disadvantage. We have all been able to develop because we have been able to leverage that multilateral system. This multilateral system is something that was built by, championed by, and sponsored by the United States of America. Today, in Trump's actions on tariffs and in other statements that he's made, he's showing that under his administration, America, this great nation, no longer sees value for themselves to this multilateral system. If he pulls the multilateral system away from us, we are vulnerable and unprotected. We will see more and more might makes right actions motivated by sheer power. That's not good for small states like mine. That's not good for emerging countries like we all are in this region. So my first point on why we must not retaliate but also must not appease is because we need to fight to preserve the multilateral system. We need to fight to preserve the multilateral rules-based order. Let me end with saying how important that is. True, we benefit from simply allowing ourselves to be able to trade. But let me tell you an exaggerated version of the story of economic development. Each of us in a developing country, we improve the health of our population. We train the skills of our workers. We allow them to improve in technology, and we build infrastructure to help make our nation more productive. This is the right thing to do. No nation that calls itself developed becomes developed without doing this. But while we spend all this time working on that side of improving the capacity of our nation, what we're actually doing is we're improving the supply side of our economy. And we have always felt confident in doing just that and been able to succeed at development, simply building out the supply side, because there was always a demand side at the other end of the equation ready to buy from us. Without the demand side, when you improve capacity and you train workers, you don't create jobs, you just cause unemployment. When the multilateral system gets pulled away from us and the international trading system is no longer available, everything that we've done for economic development becomes simply an increase in unemployment. We must fight to keep the multilateral system in place. That is why I found so inspiring what your vice ministers have said about preserving the system. But that's also why I emphasize we should not be appeasing those who are working to undermine that system. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Quah. I think that's also in lines with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong's mentions last week about the multilateral trading systems and how important it is that we need to preserve it. We need to even revitalize it. But how do you think that we can do that? Because currently, or even since 10 years ago, nobody really cared about the WTO and multilateral trading systems. Yeah. How can the regions, what kind of things that the regions do in order to revitalize it?
That's a really good question. I think when we think about the multilateral system, we think about the entire world, the globe, and that's right. That's the best kind of multilateral system to have. But that multilateral system is also very costly and expensive. And when the sponsors of that system no longer want to maintain it, it crumbles. But if we see the gain to having that kind of a system operate for us, we can be controlled in our expectations and build a regional multilateral system. I can easily see how the member states of ASEAN come together, build an agreement on what our trading system, international trading system should look like. Our own system for security, our own system for managing our financial affairs. Economists in the old days said regions shouldn't do that because it's not efficient. And when you start doing that, everybody starts doing that. You have what's called a spaghetti bowl of small systems. That's a wonderful vision, if that international multilateral system is available to you. But if it's not, because its architect has left the room, these regional multilateral systems begin to look pretty good. ASEAN can be the foundation for one such of these. But we have to be determined on ASEAN, set our sights a little bit higher, and work together to try and build that system.
So that's also another things that ASEAN need to envision actually to respond to the current situations at the moment. Let me move to Shiro, Professor Shiro Armstrong from the ANU. Do you have any response to our discussions today? And perhaps one thing that we haven't really mentioned so far is the factor of the Chinese factor, China, because I think it's one of the main issue that Trump and also U.S. administrations at the moment try to eliminate or try to exclude from the international trade or from the global economy. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Yose, and it's great to be back here at CSIS. I will get to China in a bit, but I first want to just congratulate the Vice Minister, Ministry of Trade here, and the Indonesian initiative on the non-paper. That is really significant, I think, and to have the foresight to put that to the ASEAN economic ministers in February to prepare a coordinated response, I think is the kind of leadership this region, ASEAN, but broader, that kind of leadership that we need. And that really reaffirmed what the Vice Minister and others have talked about, non-retaliation and acting collectively as a group. And you're always much bigger if you act collectively and you have leverage. And I want to come back to that acting collectively because that's going to be very important going forward. Because this is not over. We're only just entering this period of uncertainty and rising protectionism in the United States. Yes, Chinese goods have found it increasingly difficult to enter the United States, the biggest consumer in the world, and so they have been flooding into Southeast Asia and elsewhere, putting pressure on adjustment in Southeast Asia and other economies. So that's something that has to be managed, but managed again collectively. And more pressure is on the way. So I just want to take a brief moment as my second point to talk about the United States, where the United States is at. So this measure last week from the United States is the biggest assault on the multilateral system that we've seen in our lifetimes, of course. In fact, the biggest assault since 1930s with the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that are infamous, of course. But the tariffs that are even on today, after the tariffs were removed or paused for 90 days, are much higher than the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930. But that Smoot-Hawley tariff was not so high for the United States compared to the 19th century, what they had then. What made it so damaging was everybody retaliating. And so we were stuck in a retaliatory cycle, and the world split into blocks, and the Great Depression became much greater, much deeper, and was prolonged. So that's what we have to do. We have to avoid retaliation, and it's a great start by Indonesia and Southeast Asia, but that needs to hold for the rest of the world. The uncertainty we've seen from the shock last week, we've seen it in the stock markets, of course, globally, but also we've seen it in the US bond markets. US assets are now seen as risky, and this is creating much more uncertainty than the stock markets, and reportedly is one of the reasons why President Trump paused. But this is a pause, and we can expect more uncertainty along the way and perhaps more protectionism. And I'd just say finally on the United States, be careful of any deal you make. So Danny had another way of saying this, but the United States just last week tore up every trade agreement it has ever negotiated and signed in one fell swoop. Now, going to negotiate with the Americans in the face of economic coercion, having to give up all sorts of strange things, I don't think you can trust any of that to last. That's a reality. So I think we've got to be very realistic and open about that. Now let me finish, Yose, by coming back to collective action. Because this is where we need collective action, not against the United States, but to protect the global trading system, the rules-based multilateral order, as Danny described it. And this is where ASEAN's leadership is a great start, but of course we need a broader conception of this and a broader response. So I agree with Danny, we're in a bottom-up world now. The creator of the system is now the biggest threat to the system. The United States is a big uncertainty to the system. But if it's just bottom-up action that's not really connected, we are at risk of breaking up into blocks. So I think it was extremely promising that a week and a half ago, so beginning of last week, the foreign ministers of Japan, China and South Korea met. Foreign ministers, not trade ministers, to agree to deepen trade cooperation, and they named RCEP as a venue to do so, a platform. That gives, of course, impetus for ASEAN to further lead. RCEP is Indonesia's creation. It is ASEAN's creation, and it helps preserve and strengthen ASEAN centrality. RCEP is now an extremely important platform to protect the multilateral interests of this part of the world. It's a platform to project its multilateral interests. Of course, it includes Australia and New Zealand, as well as Northeast Asia and ASEAN. And both Australia and New Zealand, like the rest of ASEAN, has declared we're not retaliating. Of course, that just hurts yourself. Retaliation is welfare reducing. And that's a high-risk game. And the Canadians, the Europeans and others feel they politically have to retaliate, the political need to retaliate. Targeting retaliation still is very high risk. We've seen that with Chinese retaliation and then American retaliation towards China in a never-ending retaliatory cycle that is going to be difficult to undo. So that's where I think, Yose, you did mention China. This is a framework to engage the Chinese economy. Now, the Chinese economy is the largest trader in the world, And that's pretty important. The Chinese depend on the multilateral rules and rules-based system, so it's felt the need politically to retaliate against the United States, but we need to, I think, collectively engage the Chinese economy, sign it up to more rules, integrate it into more markets, and help the Chinese do what they want to do anyway, which is reform and increase consumption so that their goods are not continuing to flood the rest of the world as they can't enter the US market. Thanks.
Well, you mentioned about Australia and New Zealand because when we're talking about regional response, what we have in mind normally ASEAN, the response from ASEAN. But how Australia and New Zealand perhaps can also contribute to this regional response, the same as our Northeast Asian partner, perhaps. So, what do you think about this contribution or this participation from other countries in the region?
Well, that's going to be crucial, and as with ASEAN at its centre, I think the RCEP arrangements, the ASEAN Plus arrangements are going to be crucial. And Australia plays an important role. You just have to understand Australia's interests. A small open economy, might sound strange to some people to call Australia small, but we're a price taker. We rely on international trade, and many may not know this, but we are the most East Asian economy in the world. 67% of Australia's trade is with East Asia. This is our neighbourhood, and this is where our economic security and our prosperity comes from, and our interests are so closely aligned with ASEAN and Northeast Asia in protection of this system. So there is not only a willing partner in Australasia, in Australia, but I think an important partner. And then, of course, it's from this ASEAN-led base in all of East Asia to engage with the Europeans, Canadians, basically anyone who wants to stand up for the rules-based order. And we're going to be operating in a global system minus the United States going forward. That's the game.
So ASEAN can count on the support from Australia and so also many other countries like the region. Okay, let me move to Ibu Donna. This is perhaps different. Perhaps you have different view, especially because I might say you can say some things or represent the view of the American business. Maybe because we're talking about the impact to other countries, the impact to Indonesia, to ASEAN countries, to other to China, but actually the most impacted group from this tariff policy is American business. What do you think about the whole situation right now?
Thank you so much, Dr. Yose. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Bu Mari. Good to see you again. Yeah, I think we are representing American businesses here in Indonesia, not representing the government, right? It's totally two different views. So government is U.S. government is U.S. government, U.S. businesses are U.S.-based businesses. So yeah, I think first of all, I have three things to share. First of all, American businesses would like to thank Indonesian government. We really appreciate the non-retaliation approach for Indonesia. We do believe, like Professor Kuan and also Professor Armstrong said, that retaliation will not go anywhere and will not solve any solution. So we really appreciate the diplomacy and also a negotiation route. And we also agree with the multilateral and bilateral front. ASEAN is a very good, what we call it, organization that we can leverage going forward, especially regionally. And most of our member companies are in the region as well, not only in Indonesia, but also operating in other countries in the region. So this is like a perfect approach to go through negotiation with ASEAN and also with the current or going to be revamped trade agreements again within ASEAN or bilaterals through TIFA or SIPA and all other agreements. So first of all, we ASEAN American businesses agree with that and thank the Indonesian government. And also the second one that quite important and really addressed also by President Prabowo is the regulatory reform. So American businesses really believe in regulatory reform is really needed, not only to respond to Trump's tariff Liberation Day reciprocal tariff initiative, but for ease of doing business in Indonesia. So we see 2 days ago President Prabowo said that it's going to be relaxed or lifted or banned. We still need some clarification on that because we do believe that import procedure must be conducted selectively and cautiously, not like just opening all the current for that, because that will not only destroy local industry but also is not too not conducive for all other industries from especially from foreign direct investment. And also on the local content, we really concerned on that. But we do think that local content is somehow needed to protect national industry, but needs to be discussed on what kind of things that can considered as local content. So we are asking for like a room for negotiation or for dialogue. So not only physical manufacturing facilities, but local content can be calculated through innovation, research and development, human capital, and all other things that also can bring value to Indonesia and to industry. So that's the second part, the regulatory reform, that we really would like to be involved in negotiation and diplomacy and discussions. And the third one is for sure in the American businesses in Indonesia. AmCham members are more than 300 companies. A lot of them have been present in Indonesia for many years. Some of them are here in Indonesia for more than 100 years, American companies, and we are keen to stay here in Indonesia. So this is that's why when Dr. Yose said the impact, yes, American businesses are impacted. The exports on apparels, shoes, mostly are under American businesses, American brands. So it's going to hit American customers. Not only will hit us here in Indonesia, and also our vendors and all the domino effects on the factories in Indonesia that are exporting, but also to American customers. So we are open for being a partner for Indonesia and the government in terms of discussions. We would like to have some kind of protection on US businesses in Indonesia, especially the factories, all kinds of businesses that involve local labor and also export to not only to the US but also to other countries in the world. So we would like to continue partner with Indonesian government. We are very thankful that we are involved in all kinds of negotiation and meetings and discussion and invited to give inputs, and we will continue doing that so because our members are here to stay.
Thank you, Bu Donna. Let me, as a follow-up, let me ask you a question. Many things that this also opens up opportunity, especially from relocations of investment and also looking at diversifying the market. What do you think from the American business perspective? Is it quite reasonable to expect relocations of investment, for example, or more investments from American business in all countries, in other countries, or perhaps this policy really create a pressure for American business to go back to the US? What do you think about it?
I really like that. I would like to quote John F. Kennedy, who says that in the Chinese words, crisis, in one word, it's danger, but the other word is opportunity, right? So I think let's see. It's every day is a new day. Every day we see the news. Different things happen each day. I can say that currently we are in a very interesting moment, both for Indonesian government and the U.S. government. Both of us have new government, trying to get settled, trying to get buy-in from the people, and like last night we saw that it's going to be paused, and we don't know tomorrow what will happen, but the opportunity is there. American companies are hit by the drop of the stock market in the US as well, right? Not only Indonesia, but globally for sure. But this is something that for sure they will really go back and do their calculation, business strategy, and use this as an opportunity to expand, to diversify, to look at other opportunities, and also it is a very good challenge for Indonesia's industries, right? Because Indonesia has to be ready for relocation of factories, for instance, from China, or from other countries. Our labor ready or not, our infrastructure ready or not, our regulation ready or not, we cannot really take it for granted that Indonesia is a big nation, but we have to be ready. We are a big nation, we are a good market, but we need to be ready to be able to play globally with this opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I will open up the floor, discussion to the floor. But before that, maybe I'm going to ask either to Shiro or to Dani or also Bu Mari about the effect on macroeconomic issues, global macroeconomic issues and financial market. Shiro already mentions about it, but I think this hasn't really been discussed quite detailed. Most of the discussion is on trade issues. But what about the macroeconomic issue or financial market?
Yeah, let me start and then Danny can jump in and clean up after me. Look, there are a lot of effects from this uncertainty. Maybe I'll just pick up from the previous question you asked about relocating businesses to the United States, because this is, I guess, one thing that is one aim of the tariff policies. There are many different aims. Now, if you want to start building a factory in the United States because the tariff walls have gone up, suddenly the tariff walls have come down. Basically, the uncertainty is going to hurt investment. And that uncertainty is putting shockwaves around the global economy. So I think there are a few things we can learn from these measures. First, better to have certainty and reform, so deregulation in Indonesia and our countries. That goes without saying at any time, but especially in crisis. So that's the first point. The second point, I think, the other thing we can learn, the source of this retreat from openness from the United States is really because of their domestic structural problems and growing inequality. The United States has benefited from globalization and trade with China in total, but a lot of communities have been left behind. So, thinking about social safety nets, social support in our economies, and reducing inequality, sharing the benefits. So I think there are some pretty important lessons to learn like that. Now on the macroeconomics, the currency shocks are already hurting our economies, disrupting trade and investment. We're going to have much more of this as US bond yields are still high, so US interest rates are high, the costs of borrowing in the United States are much higher because of this uncertainty. So, what can we do? Well, another lesson, and I think this is what you're hinting at, is avoid a currency war. This is what happened in the 1930s as well, everybody trying to depreciate their currency to make their exports more competitive. Now we're going to have to avoid a race to the bottom like that. And that's a time for countries to get together and agree, like we did after the global financial crisis at the G20, to avoid these, what we call beggar thy neighbour protectionist policies or currency devaluations. They just hurt each other when we've made such a good start with Indonesian leadership on a regional response, a collective response.
hopefully we can avoid that kind of war. But we managed, at least until now, we managed to avoid the tariff war. So hopefully we're not going to be involved in the currency war later on. Yeah. Danny,
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, my fellow panelists, for such wonderful observations. I've learned a great deal from listening to this conversation. In terms of your question about macro, let me say, here's my prediction. Prices will be higher, inflation will be higher, growth will be lower, unemployment will be higher, investment will fall. So those all follow very easily from the tariff actions and other protectionist measures that we've seen now. But you might be asking, why is America wanting to go through all this? Why does it want higher inflation when Trump promised his voters he was going to bring the price of eggs down? Why are we heading into a period of unemployment when it is precisely the unemployed workers who looked at Trump thinking that he would help save them? So if I may, let me take your macro question and turn it into a very quick observation about geopolitical rivalry, geostrategic competition, US-China rivalry. There is a conventional wisdom now that a lot of what America is doing, in addition to the domestic dysfunction that Shiro described, is because China is its enemy. And according to that story, China is its enemy because of something called the China shock. The China shock is a term that some of my colleague economists referred to when they said China exporting so much to the United States ended up destroying American jobs, hollowing out American industry, turning into ghost towns what were once thriving middle-class American communities. And that America cannot tolerate that, but must hit back. In addition to that, we already had one quote from John F. Kennedy. Let me give you another. 80 years ago, John F. Kennedy stood on the steps of Capitol Hill and said, now, going forwards, is humanity's great last twilight struggle between the forces of democracy and freedom and those for totalitarianism and tyranny. Whether you believe the China shock idea or you believe the Kennedy great conflict between political systems idea, America is now caught in this great geopolitical struggle with a rising great power. So that's a story that so many of us use to think about what America is doing. Just to end, I am very uneasy with both of those stories. I'm uneasy with both of them. I think that for the rest of us, the America shock is as big as the China shock. What's happening to us in Southeast Asia now is you are hit by the America shock. Second, some of the most dramatic actions that have been taken recently are by America, who are no great lovers of democracy and freedom, who do not stand on the steps of Capitol Hill and talk about fighting for democracy. Quite the opposite. So something else is going on. And what that something else is, I think we still need to figure out. We need to understand why America is being so disruptive. Some of it does have to do with unemployment, income inequality, and the rest of that. But it's also about tech bro billionaires coming out and having a view of the world and helping Trump disrupt the international system. It's also about many observations about America that are inconsistent with both the China shock idea and the democracy and freedom idea. So if I may, let me leave it as that this is something we all have to figure out. As we are busy not retaliating and not appeasing, but building regional solidarity, looking forward to long-term security, we haven't figured out the world, and we need to do that.
Thank you. Very, very, very inspiring, Dali. Yeah. Now I open up the floor to questions. Please, if anybody wants to ask questions, anybody? Are you too shy or too complicated, or still? Yeah, still want to try to understand. Yeah. Okay.
Test.
Please identify yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Stephen. I am from International Relations. My question is, what makes the difference between protectionist Trump in his administrative after Biden's administration and before Biden's administration? Maybe that's the first my question. Yeah.
Okay.
My first
All
question.
right. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions to our very distinguished panelists here? Please. Please identify yourself first.
Thank you for giving us opportunity. I'm a counselor at the Korean Embassy here. I have a
Korean
question.
mission to ASEAN.
Yeah, no, Korean Embassy to bilateral relations
All right.
with Indonesia. I have a question for AmCham Managing Director. I read an article and there is an announcement from Indonesian leadership that there is one incentive to resolve this tariff issue. The Indonesian side is considering deregulation, especially about the decadent and all of these issues, and maybe those deregulation can be beneficial to US companies, but as far as I know, it is difficult to understand because the only importing more US goods is a very simple calculation to decrease the trade surplus, but on the other hand, this deregulation issue is difficult to understand how this deregulation is beneficial to US companies, and is it with those deregulation can be universal to other companies investing here. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no other questions, I would like to ask the panelists to respond to the question.
Okay, I think I try to answer the first question first. So Trump 1.0 compared to Trump 2.0, the protection issue, is that your question, right? So I think the protectionism is always there. Since you heard MAGA jargon, make America great again. So it started, you can hear it from the Trump 1.0, and it goes to the current situation, right? I think it's always there. Maybe the difference is, you can see the difference. In Trump 1.0, there was no Liberation Day, but there is no reciprocal tariffs. There are here and there, sporadically, different tariffs here and there, depending on the commodities. But now it's like more, not only to Indonesia, but also to the whole world. So basically, it's a continuation from Trump 1.0 that really opened people's eyes. But again, maybe this is the opportunity for all of us to look back, look inside, and see where can we go. Maybe now it's more than ever that we need ASEAN to be very active, more than ever, right? And other multilateral agreement to be revamped and alive again. And for your second question, I think one of the discussions by President Prabowo is to buy more products from the U.S. But hopefully for products that are not available in Indonesia, right? And regarding the relaxation or the regulatory reform, we believe that when we joined the meeting coordinated by the Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs on Monday, Minister Erlangga said that there will be task force that will discuss on details. So I think we believe that those things cannot be done like all across the board. So hopefully we can be involved in that task force. And if that task force is forced, or if we can find good alignment, good win-win situation, for sure this will not only apply to US businesses, because this will impact other businesses as well, especially to Korean businesses. For instance, if we really think that all the import quota or the TKDN local content is lifted, and then it's not fair for companies who are already building their factories here, right? For instance, Korean factories. So I think let's work in more details with the government on the implementation and the integrity of that regulatory reform. I mean, I cannot answer you right now, but for sure we'll be happy to be a partner, be a good partner for the Indonesian government for discussion a bit further. I hope I answer both of your questions.
I'll be really quick. You know, the difference between Trump 2.0 and 2.1, a lot of it is a continuation, and in fact, President Biden's administration did not reverse a lot of the measures of Trump 1.0. Right? So Trump 1.0 made sure the WTO rules were not enforceable. That's pretty serious when we talk about a rules-based order where the rules are not enforceable. Now, what Trump 2.0 has done, fewer constraints in the White House and a much more enabling environment around him, is just accelerated this, and it's so in your face that I think it might spur, this is a silver lining, might spur the rest of the world into action instead of this slower, deeper burn that was continuing. Now, importantly, the rules, the trade rules are enforceable for 54 of the WTO members, 164, who've signed on to this multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement. It's a very long acronym. Indonesia hasn't. So Australia, China, we resolved our trade dispute between Australia and China because of this workaround. European Union, Canada, Japan, Singapore, of course, are other members of this. I think this is the sort of thing we're going to look to Indonesia and ASEAN for more leadership on, signing up to make sure the rules are enforceable to protect Indonesian interests. And then very quickly on Indonesian deregulation, this is an opportunity for Indonesia to deregulate, not to increase United States imports, but to have a more resilient and more flexible economy. Thanks.
The difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, as Shiro has pointed out, all the trade restrictions that Trump 1.0 put in place, President Joe Biden did nothing to remove them. So Trump 2.0 was able to build on all of that and made it even more extreme. But it's not just in trade that Trump 2.0 has been different. In Trump 2.0, we now have foreign students being rounded up on the streets of the United States. We now have attacks on American universities. We now have Trump taking out action on parts of the government and parts of the legal and journalistic community. Trump 2.0 is a whole other order of madness than Trump 1.0. And we will have to wait to see how all of this comes out. Trump 1.0 already had very militant trade people in Robert Lighthizer, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, and others in charge. If anything, on that front, Trump 2.0 has pulled a little bit of that visibility in, but nonetheless has continued that journey. If I may, I know that this was the question not directed at me, but directed at the Indonesians. On the question from the Korean embassy about reform, and shouldn't Indonesia use this as an opportunity to buy more US goods? Indonesia should do what is best for Indonesia. If American goods are expensive and low quality and Indonesians don't want to buy them, Indonesians shouldn't be forced to buy them just because there's a bully on the other side of that line telling Indonesia what to do. Indonesia should reform for the benefit of Indonesians. And we should not, whether we're Indonesia or anybody else, be doing, I earlier said we should not be trying to appease a bully. Buying things from the bully just so we can show a trade so they can show a trade surplus is appeasement. And we should not be doing that. And the final observation is, whether you have a trade balance or a trade balance deficit or surplus, that's not going to stop Trump from taking action against you. Singapore, we run a trade deficit against the United States. The United States already has a trade surplus against us. We have 0 tariffs against the United States. Did not stop America from putting tariffs on us. So don't go down that road. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Ibu Mari, are you still with us? You want a response to, especially for the question from our colleague from Korea Embassy?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, Murray.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Very faintly.
Can you hear me? Can you put your thumb up if you can hear me?
Okay, okay, you can.
Okay, you can hear me? Okay, I just wanted to answer the question from the Korean Embassy and to add to the explanation from Donna that basically, as both Danny and Shiro said, the Indonesian government is going to do deregulation, and it is for our own, the importance of it is for our own needs to increase competitiveness, increase efficiency, and increase, hopefully, investments that will come to Indonesia and therefore contribute to our growth. And it is not intended to respond to just whatever the US has put in the USTR report. A lot of the issues that is in the USTR report were actually already issues that our own businesses and chambers of commerce have already highlighted. And we already had discussed this as part of a deregulation program. So to answer your question, the elements of this deregulation program is intended to reduce, in my time in the 80s when we did the big deregulation package, we had the term high-cost economy. Unfortunately, we're facing the same issue again of the high-cost economy. So a lot of the deregulation is addressing the so-called high-cost economy, which comprises of simplifying, making more transparent the import licensing process. It is about the investment licensing and the business operations process. And it's also about as you would have noticed, TKDN or local content requirements were mentioned. The intention is not to wipe out the local content requirements, but to improve on the way they're being implemented, and definitely take into account what investments that have already come in that responded to the local content requirements. So it's not to wipe them out or to go back to not having the local content requirements, but to make them more effective, have a kind of a roadmap that may be giving more incentive rather than penalty to meeting the local content requirements. That's the intention. But definitely we will be discussing, so that when Donna mentioned the task force is actually comprising of the coordinating minister of the economy as well as the National Economic Council. And of course, in terms of structure of coordination between the technical ministries, it will go through the coordinating ministry. But definitely the National Economic Council will be providing inputs as well as helping to monitor and evaluate the process and the progress of the deregulation. So all I can say is watch this space. We're all going to be working hard to deliver on the deregulation, and hopefully, and we will be listening a lot to all of the business sector on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Mari, for the answer, for the response. Here we have actually Professor Tetsuya Watanabe from the Economic Research Institute of ASEAN and East Asia. Perhaps you would like to share some things about the regional response to Trump 2.0, Professor Watanabe.
Thank you. Yose. My name is Watanabe from area. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Just very quick, three things. Number one is the think tank, as the CSIS and area and others. We need to have first the impact analysis on the country and the region and the specific sectors. That's number one. Number two is maybe policy response to strengthen solidarity of this region. We need to operationalize. Mari mentioned that the sector, critical mineral and supply chain restructuring and maybe management of AI and emerging technology and climate action, energy transition. Finally, maybe crisis versus opportunity. And it's a great opportunity for ASEAN to sell the global investors to come to this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, Pak Yusuf, you also want to say something about it?
If I may sit down, you know. Well, all these black pictures we are now, of course, you know, talking about and reinforcing each other to be more pessimistic than the other one. You also have to see it from the optimistic part. One has been said, we can change our rules that otherwise we will never be able to because of domestic pressures. And for Indonesia, that is a big thing. Number two, I think, you know, that we also, as you know, we are also struggling how actually to get the change in ASEAN. Because 10 years of no leadership in ASEAN, because my president was not interested. And for that reason, you know, we have not changed. Because we try, we don't create, but we try with Burma or Myanmar, didn't work. We try, you know, of course, you know, with other things, you know, like the sea and all that, law of the sea, didn't work. Maybe this time it will work. Why? Because all the lives of all these ASEAN countries are at stake. And hopefully we can make use of that. Yeah. So not only see all these things because of the stupidity of one president, but see also this one thing as an opportunity for us to change. And I go even further. Mary said that. The possibility not only to stay with us together, but also to include others that might be actually very useful to strengthen this, you know, cooperation, East Asian cooperation that we have always in mind, never could fulfill. That could be a possibility if ASEAN under Prabowo is really up to what we expect from him. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Yusuf. With that very optimistic note, I think we will end our discussions. We've been discussing the issue for in the last 2 hours. Very inspiring, very intriguing, and interesting to see what's going to happen also in the next few months or next even few years. But as Pak Yusuf mentions, as Dani also mentions, Bu Donna and Shiro also mentioned, this is also over us an opportunity. And I think the regional response would become pretty much very important and elemental, especially when we're trying to realize this opportunity. And of course, in the longer terms, we cannot just let the bully win the game. And we have to get this regional response in order to answer or to respond more appropriately. Thank you very much for all the speakers. I think they all deserve a big round of applause for all of us. And also thank you to all of you who've been participating very actively during our public forum, our discussions this afternoon. See you again in other CSIS forums that would be we'll have in the next few days. On the 16th, for example, we're going to have the commemorations of 60th anniversary of Asia Africa conference. So you are also invited to come. Please register first. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, very big round of applause. Thank you very much, everyone. Pa Yose for moderating the discussion. We'd like to also thank all of the panelists for today. Mr. Danny Quah, Mr. Shiro Armstrong, and also Mrs. Donna Priadi. You may, thank you so much. You may go down the stage. One more picture? Oh, one more picture. Oh, we would also like to give you a token of appreciation.
This is the book of CSIS. I don't know you have it or not. I haven't. It's for 50 years of yeah. I have a copy. And also some of our new report on the strategic standards. Thank you very much. Yeah, one by one. So I know you have a copy of it. Maybe you can have another one. Thank you. Thank you.